Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutip. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me. As you know, these are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. If there's news that's breaking out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let's begin. A community grieving following the latest school shooting in America. What we're learning about the 15-year-old shooter in Madison, Wisconsin, and the teacher and the student who were killed. Plus, a top Russian general killed by an explosion in Moscow, and Ukraine is taking the credit. And TikTok is turning to the U.S. Supreme Court in a last-ditch effort to block the law that would ban the app next month. What's next in the legal battle? This is CBS News 24/7. The community in Madison, Wisconsin is in mourning after yesterday's deadly school shooting at a small private school. Police say it was a second grader who called 911 to report that there was an active shooter at the Abundant Life Christian School. The shooting killed one student and one teacher. Police say the suspected shooter was a 15-year-old girl who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At least 6 other people were taken to the hospital, including 2 students with life-threatening injuries.
The trauma, it's a lot, because I'm sure they lost friends and teachers, which is not okay. And I don't think they will be okay for a long time.
How many gunshots did you hear?
I heard 2.
And what were you thinking? What are you thinking now?
I was scared. Why did they do that? Why?
Why? That's the question we're all asking. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Ian Lee, who's following the very latest for us this morning. So, Ian, when you hear a child like that asking why, that's understandable because they're just babies practically. But the adults in this situation are also asking why. So what are the police saying? What kind of questions do they have and what kind of answers are they getting?
Yeah, good morning, Vlad. That is the big question today. Why this 15-year-old carry out that crime? And behind me, this is her home. And you could possibly see the front door there. There is a blanket there right now. That is because police breached that entrance when they came to this house yesterday. You can also see there's a damaged window there. That is because they were afraid there could be some explosives behind the door. They weren't taking any chances. But this is what the police chief said about the family earlier this morning.
Well, we know that her family is cooperating with all investigation right now. We'll spend a lot of time today going through some items that we took from her house as a result of a search. We'll look through her social media, talk to some of her friends, and really try to piece together how a 15-year-old was able to do something like this in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, Vlad. So it is going through that social media, talking to friends, learning about this young girl's life, but also trying to figure out how she got her hands on a 9mm pistol. Vlad.
Ian, as you know, also said some first responders were training for an active shooter situation when those kinds of calls come in. But I want to hone in on that second grader who called 911. You and I have covered these mass shootings far too often in our careers. I did a story a few years ago where I visited a school where they were teaching 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders how to behave in an active shooter situation. And I remember thinking to myself how heartbreaking it is to watch these little 4-foot humans trying to pick up book bags and pencils and scissors to protect themselves in the case of an active shooter. In this case, a 2nd grader called 911 to the police. What are you learning about that child?
Well, it is pretty remarkable that this 2nd grader had the mindset to make this phone call at 10:57 and that the police were able to react so quickly. These kids go through these active shooter drills, and when they do, the teachers say, this is a drill, this is a drill. This time it wasn't a drill. And so this young child was able to make the phone call, and it was pretty quick on how the police were able to respond. That call was at 10:57. By 11 o'clock, the first police officer was at the school. They were able to get emergency services there, medics there. Within 10 minutes, they were able to find the shooter, who died from what police say is a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Within the first half hour, the site site was pretty much locked down. Parents were being notified, and the situation was over. So the police had, as you said earlier, they had been preparing for something like this. They hoped it never would happen. Sadly, yesterday it did.
And I've seen reports that the teacher who was killed was a substitute.
Yeah, that is what we're learning. We heard that from the police chief this morning, something that is just so tragic. The substitute teacher who was in there during, with those students, another student was shot and killed. And another teacher right now was also taken to the hospital with a gunshot wound. So, there's a lot of thought about the people who are injured right now. Two of them, as you point out, are still fighting for their lives, Vlad.
All right, Ian Lee covering just another mass shooting in the United States. Sadly, tragically, hearts go out to the victims. Thank you, Ian, for your reporting. Appreciate it. All right, let's bring you some international news now. A senior Russian military official, has been killed in an explosion in Moscow that happened this morning. And Ukrainian security sources tell CBS News that they were the ones behind the assassination. Joining us now for more is CBS News reporter Haley Ott. Haley, what more can you tell us about this?
Hi, Vlad. Yes, so investigators say that it was a senior Russian military official named Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov and his assistant who were killed near the entrance of an apartment building in southeast Moscow this morning by a bomb, which they say was hidden in an electric scooter. Russian state media says the bomb had the power of about 300 grams of TNT and was detonated by some sort of remote control. And Ukraine, as you said, has already taken responsibility for the attack. Ukrainian security sources told CBS News that the country's security service, the SBU, had carried out the bombing, killing Kirillov in what it called a special operation and calling him a war criminal and a legitimate target because they say he ordered the use of banned chemical weapons in Ukraine.
Many believe that this lieutenant general was the one that was killed. What are we learning about this Russian military general?
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard about this particular person, his name is Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov. He was the head of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical protection forces. And both he individually and the unit he headed were under sanctions by a number of countries, some sanctioning the unit, some sanctioning him. That includes the U.S. and the U.K., and that was for the use of chemical weapons on the battlefield. And just yesterday, Kirillov was charged in absentia in Ukraine, with Ukraine's security service saying it's recorded around 4,800 uses of chemical weapons by Russia since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Now, while for Ukraine, Kirillov was a legitimate target of war, Russia has said that they're treating the bombing as a terrorist attack.
Haley, we're also learning that North Korean troops are taking a more active part in the war. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so we had already heard from U.S. and Ukrainian officials that Russia was deploying North Korean troops, but now we're hearing that they're at the heart of a significant Russian offensive in the western Kursk region and that they've suffered casualties. The Kursk region of Russia has been that region that's been occupied by Ukraine since it carried out that shock incursion into Russian territory in August. The U.S. and Ukraine said that an estimated 10,000 to 12,000 North Koreans had been deployed there. Now, Ukraine's military intelligence has said that at least 30 were killed or wounded over the weekend. Vlad?
All right, Haley Ott for us. Thank you, Haley. Appreciate it. We're hearing from President-elect Donald Trump's team following a new ruling in his New York criminal trial. Judge Juan Merchan has rejected Trump's attempt to have his case thrown out. His attorneys have pointed to the Supreme Court's July decision on presidential immunity, but Merchan says the case concerns entirely unofficial conduct. CBS News correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is now in West Palm Beach, Florida, and joins us live to talk about it. Good to see you, Caitlin.
Hey, Vlad. Well, this was a very interesting case because, as you mentioned, this centers around the question of presidential immunity, which was established by the Supreme Court earlier this year. The Trump team was trying to argue that evidence collected through this involved statements from former White House officials and statements made while Trump was president. But the judge in this case, Merchan, said that this it has to do with unofficial acts, that the crime committed here was done while, before Trump was president. We're also hearing from the Trump transition team, as you can imagine, criticizing this ruling, and the judge himself saying the sooner these hoaxes end, the sooner our country can unite behind President Trump for the betterment of all Americans. Now, you may remember, Vlad, that sentencing in this case was postponed till after the election so as to not interfere with the election. And then it has been asked by the prosecutors to postpone it until essentially Trump's term ends. Of course, there's longstanding Justice Department policy not to prosecute a sitting president, which is why those federal cases have concluded. But in this case, this sentencing would be deferred till after Trump's term ends. And basically, the judge in this case said that he didn't want to throw it out entirely because of what that could mean for the justice system.
All right, Caitlin, let me ask you about this press conference the president-elect held yesterday. It was his first one since winning the election, and you specifically asked him a question about vaccines. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, Vlad, his pick for HHS director, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has come under scrutiny. He is, of course, on Capitol Hill this week, trying to garner support for senators ahead of his confirmation. And he has come under scrutiny, of course, for his past comments and misinformation that he has said about vaccines. And at particular issue here is his attorney had petitioned the FDA back in 2022 to revoke the polio vaccine. And that had garnered criticism from Mitch McConnell, the Republican senator who, as you know, survived polio as a child. And so in a statement a couple of days ago, he warned Kennedy about associating with someone like this and said that those views are dangerous. So I specifically asked the president-elect what he wants Kennedy to do when it comes to vaccines. Take a listen.
Do you want RFK Jr. to revoke any vaccines?
No, I want him to come back with a report as to what he thinks. We're going to find out a lot. Nothing's going to happen very quickly. You're not going to lose the polio vaccine. That's not going to happen.
So you see him there saying that he wants Kennedy to look into some of this, but he did say that he wants to keep the polio vaccine. And I should mention, too, that when Kennedy arrived on Capitol Hill yesterday to start his meetings with senators, he also said he would like to keep the polio vaccine. Vlad?
Yeah, I saw that moment with Kennedy shouting that out to reporters yesterday, Caitlin, and it just sort of reminds me of the Senate and its role for advising and consenting. That you see this play out with Supreme Court nominees, right? They get up there and they say, "Oh, nothing that I said in the public record has anything to do with how I'm going to, decide cases if I should be put on the bench." I hope that in this particular case, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as you know, sued to have the polio vaccine taken out of schools in years past. So we'll see how it all breaks down. But I think a lot of people are sort of scratching their heads at this one. Caitlin Huey Burns for us in West Palm Beach, Florida. As always, my friend, appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about TikTok. Taking that legal battle to the U.S. Supreme Court, the federal government has ordered the Chinese-owned app to shut down or be sold to an American company by January 19th, citing national security concerns. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is here with more. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
All right, so let's talk about this emergency. Well, I mean, they're going to the Supreme Court. Why?
I mean, this is really the last-ditch effort to temporarily halt this ban. They already went the federal appeal route. Of course, they lost that. So the Supreme Court's kind of that last legal path. They're arguing that this is a First Amendment right issue, that without this, our right to free speech will be infringed upon. Now, I've talked to legal experts, and they're saying, that's kind of a weak argument here because, of course, you and I could go to Instagram. We could go to X. There's a lot of different platforms. But this is the argument they're going to make. They've asked the Supreme Court to give them a decision by January 6th because, of course, that ban is coming January 19th.
So the president-elect met with the CEO of TikTok back in March, I think, in Mar-a-Lago. What came of that meeting?
So actually, he met with him yesterday.
Oh, he met with him yesterday.
Yes. So, of course, this is one of the many tech CEOs that are sort of coming down to Mar-a-Lago and talk through it. We don't have details on exactly where President-elect Trump's head is coming out of that meeting. But in that press conference that Caitlin was at, there was talk of, hey, what are you going to do here? And he says he has a soft spot for TikTok. I think this is really interesting, Vlad, because remember his first administration, he wanted to ban it.
Yeah.
And now we're sort of seeing this change happen. Of course, he does take office a day after that ban would go into effect. But remember, this law had a lot of bipartisan support to ban the app.
So what would be the potential economic impact of banning TikTok?
So there's a lot of small businesses, a lot of influencers that utilize this app to either bring customers in or make their money. I do think
and those folks actually testified on Capitol Hill.
Yes, and in fact, actually, there's 8 individuals that also filed suits with the Supreme Court in support of this. So you are seeing that it's not just the company doing this. I do think you would see a lot of those companies and influencers, there probably already are on Instagram and some of these other apps. For TikTok, I mean, this would be a big deal. The U.S. is a huge market. Of course, there's this whole question of would they sell, but ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, is not willing to give up that algorithm. That's where the value is. So it's a little tough spot they're in.
Right, because the idea would be what U.S. lawmakers want to see them is divest from TikTok itself and have a U.S. owner, for example.
Exactly.
ByteDance could continue on, but there would be another entity operating TikTok here in the United States.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right, we'll see how it all plays out. I won't be able to influence my 300 followers on TikTok. I don't know what I'm going to do, Kelly.
My 0 followers, Vlad.
So you and I are both in the same boat. Thank you very much. Good to see you. All right, the president-elect is doubling down on his day one mass deportation plan. We're going to go live to the border for more on how cities and officials are preparing. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Following some breaking news out of the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly making his way to Cairo this morning for talks on a Gaza ceasefire deal. Sources briefed on the meeting tell Reuters that a deal is expected in the coming days. Our partners at the BBC are covering the very latest. Let's watch.
Prime Minister Netanyahu was on his way to Cairo. If he does go there, that will be an extraordinarily powerful signal that a deal is close. At the moment, we are being told that he's not. Those reports initially came out of Washington, not out of Jerusalem, and the reports from Israel suggest that he is not on the way. In fact, this morning, Prime Minister Netanyahu was up on Mount Hermon reviewing the situation in the Golan Heights. So it's not clear that he has switched from one conflict, if you like, to another. However, we've had 2 statements from Hamas in the past 24 hours or so, which indicate that something is happening. Negotiations, and I'm quoting here, have entered a decisive and final phase, a very advanced stage. Another statement, a serious and positive discussions are taking place in Doha. A ceasefire is possible if the occupation, in other words, if Israel stops setting new conditions. That last line should give us all just a little reason to pause, because we've been round this track many, many times. When you look at the deal that is being described, and there are various accounts of it circulating today, it's very similar to things we've heard before. A staged process where Israel gradually withdraws its forces in return for Hamas giving up the hostages that it still holds. We've been close to a deal many times in the past. The Americans in particular have talked it up several times, going back many, many months, only to find that there's some last-minute hitch. So until we see some evidence of a deal being prepared, of Prime Minister Netanyahu heading to Cairo, or some other significant gesture, I think we should all just hold our breath.
And Paul, just remind viewers.
All right, if you're just joining us, there are reports that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel is traveling to Gaza for ceasefire talks. Now, this would be a remarkable next-level achievement, given that the Prime Minister has typically, in the months past, sent representatives of the Israeli government to do the negotiating. So the fact that the Prime Minister would be traveling to Cairo is exceptionally remarkable. But we don't know that there is a deal in place. You could hear those 2 commentators there on the BBC suggesting that we should hold off before making any sort of assumptions about a ceasefire. But it does appear that there is something amiss. So obviously we'll keep you up to speed. on all the developments in the Middle East and bring you any news as warranted. It would be a remarkable, I think, something that has been long awaited by a lot of people if there were a ceasefire to be in place. Okay, let's talk about the president-elect, who is now preparing for those mass deportations during his first 100 days in office. That's what he says. The plan includes finishing the border wall and pinpointing the first group of migrants to be deported. Right now, several other countries are bracing for an influx of migrants. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez is along the U.S.-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas, and he joins me now to discuss. Camilo, so we just said in the introduction to you that he is potentially coming up with a list of who would be targeted first. What are you learning about that?
Well, Vlad, good morning. To carry out what he has promised will be the largest deportation operation in American history. President-elect Trump will likely make significant changes to U.S. immigration policy. We should expect the incoming administration to terminate current Biden administration policies, Vlad, that limit who ICE agents can arrest and deport from the country, allowing that agency to deport a broader population of people who are in the country illegally. Right now, the Biden administration is generally exempting migrants who are undocumented, who have lived here for many years without committing any crimes from deportation. That will likely end. We should also expect the incoming administration, Vlad, to reinstate immigration enforcement at work sites. That will entail ICE agents going into work sites like poultry plants, factories, and the like to round up undocumented workers who, again, are working and living in the U.S. illegally. That stopped under the Biden administration, but is likely to be reinstated. And of course, we have heard the incoming Trump administration talk about the idea of enlisting the help of the U.S. military, Vlad, to carry out this operation to at least some degree. We actually spoke to Border Czar Tom Homan, who told us that military planes could potentially be used to deport migrants to their home countries, including Mexico, which is right across this wall, that the military and the Department of Defense could also provide logistical and operational assistance by, for example, helping the Department of Homeland Security set up holding facilities near the U.S.-Mexico border to hold and detain migrants awaiting deportation. And incoming Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller has even talked about the idea, Vlad, of deputizing the National Guard to go out and arrest and deport undocumented immigrants. But of course, as you know, Vlad, all of these changes and policy proposals are likely to face legal, operational, and humanitarian challenges.
That's right, because under the Constitution, the United States military cannot be used against American citizens on U.S. soil. But Camilo, really quickly, the president has also talked about separating families where you have a child who was born in the United States and perhaps parents who are undocumented. That would face significant legal challenges because as an American citizen, that child would have rights, all of the rights ensured under the Constitution of all citizens in this country.
That is completely right, Vlad. To level set, there are about 4 million U.S. citizen children who are living with at least one parent who is an undocumented immigrant, who is an immigrant in the country illegally. That means that there are millions of children in what we can call mixed status households with varying degrees of immigration categories. And these children obviously cannot be deported because they are American citizens. ICE does not have the legal authority to deport them. But what the president-elect is saying and what his incoming borders are suggesting is that the families can return to the parent home countries together, that if the parent who is here illegally is targeted for arrest, that parent can make a decision to go back to Mexico or whatever that home country is with their U.S. citizen children. And that would be a self-deportation, if you will. It is still an open question, Vlad, if many people will actually take that option.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, not least of all that those children would still be American citizens and thus would not have the same rights as their parents in their home country. All right, Camilo, excellent reporting as always, my friend, in El Paso, Texas for us. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Vlad.
Okay, Vice President Kamala Harris will be in Prince George's County, Maryland today, where she will address young leaders who have been active in their local communities. This will be her first major public appearance since losing the presidential election. I want to bring in CBS News political reporter Nidia Cavazos. Nidia, what messages are we expecting to hear from the VP?
Good morning, Vlad. Vice President Harris will be taking the stage in just a few moments, but she is here to specifically address young people, high school students, college students, and recent graduates to urge them to stay civically engaged. She's also here to communicate to them that now their leadership is more important than ever, and this is according to White House officials. Now, Vice President Harris, we know that she has maintained relatively a low profile since she gave her concession speech the day after Election Day. But White House officials tell us that her message today will echo the remarks and the brief remarks that we've been hearing from her since then. And this is that, quote, the ongoing fight is so important and it will continue. And so this is why she needs the young leaders to step up. Now, aside from her official duties, it'll also be we'll also be seeing if she will be addressing yesterday's shooting in Madison, Wisconsin, given that this is a subject that is dear to her, as she had led the Office of Gun Violence Prevention with her official duties as vice president.
All right, Nidia Cavazos for us. Thank you, Nidia. Appreciate it. All right, that Russian woman who snuck onto a Delta flight from New York to Paris has been arrested again, this time trying to flee the United States. We're going to have the details next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following this morning. The Supreme Court has declined to hear an appeal from former White House official Peter Navarro. This is about a lower court ruling requiring him to turn over presidential email records to the Department of Justice. The DOJ sued Navarro, claiming he had retained those records on an unofficial email account during the first Trump administration. Navarro is set to join the second Trump administration after being convicted of contempt of Congress. The Russian who was charged with sneaking onto a Delta flight, well, that woman right there in your feed has been arrested once again, this time in Buffalo, New York. The FBI says Svetlana Dali cut off her ankle monitor and boarded a bus bound for Canada. The story keeps getting curiouser and curiouser. Dali was ordered to wear the tracker after being charged with breaching security at New York's JFK airport and getting on a flight to Paris without a boarding pass. She's due in court later today, but again, she cut off her tracker. And a 7.3 magnitude earthquake has struck the South Pacific island of Vanuatu. Communication is cut off in many areas, and hospitals are reporting numerous injuries. After the quake, a tsunami warning was issued, but called off shortly after. Let's bring you back now to our top story this morning, the devastating school shooting in Madison, Wisconsin, where 2 people were killed when the 15-year-old suspect opened fire inside the school. At least 6 other people were taken to the hospital, including 2 students with life-threatening injuries. The alleged shooter took her own life. I want to bring in Chris Paiota for more. He's a retired executive assistant director with the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the author of Wanted, the FBI I Once Knew. How do federal authorities, Chris, assist local police in these types of shootings?
Good morning, Vlad, and thanks for having me back. Before I answer, I'd like to offer my deepest sympathies to the victims' families and the community members impacted by this tragedy. As far as how the FBI assists, there are basically 2 ways. One, if it's a federal jurisdictional matter, the FBI will come in, work with our state and local partners, and assume investigative oversight of the incident and the following investigative work. Or if it is a state or local level law enforcement issue, our partners will ask for our assistance, and we will bring authorities, resources, and wherever needed, investigative horsepower to support their efforts.
Sadly, as you know, Chris, there have been hundreds of school shootings in the United States this year. What is the FBI even able to do just at a federal level, but also to help our local partners, short of putting armed guards at every school in America, and even that wouldn't necessarily prevent these school shootings. In your estimation, what should or could be done to see this number come down?
Well, the FBI and its law enforcement partners work closely together to provide training, awareness, and resources for the community members, the schools, the students, the teachers. The first step is awareness. The first step is to be able to predict and prevent. And that's what we try to help our partners and our community members understand. When there are warning signs, when there are early threat signals based upon behaviors, based upon certain operating models that we've identified, we try to make sure everybody's aware of those types of models so they can take the proper steps to get people some counseling and help. We also talk with people about creating what we consider to be a non-permissive environment, how to harden the facilities, make sure that the screening into the facilities is effective but does not create a lockdown state at our schools. But the students and the teachers have to know that they're safe and secure. And I think we also work very closely with a lot of other agencies for the support for people who are at risk, who are running into emotional problems and other life events that may drive them toward this kind of decision.
Chris, really quickly before I let you go, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the tracking of weapons is perhaps more in the purview of the ATF. But we're in a country right now where people are angry about who gets to use what type of bathroom, and you see less anger about the number of mass shootings in this country, and part of that has to do with access to weapons. How does the FBI track the number of weapons that Americans own? And I don't mean in a way to take those weapons away from them, but just to understand the circulation of those weapons in communities.
Well, the FBI maintains the nation's background check central repository for information at our Criminal Justice Information Services Division in West Virginia. They maintain the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, which is a system that you must query before you are allowed to purchase a firearm. So the FBI will do a series of programmed checks and background validations to make sure that you don't have any disqualification information in your background that would preclude you from having a firearm. And we also work with our partners and other law enforcement agencies on the state and local level to make sure that there are full understandings of people's personal situations when any immediate threat issues come up.
All right, Chris Paiota, always great to have you, my friend. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You too. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill have until Friday to pass a short-term spending bill and avoid a government shutdown. House Speaker Mike Johnson had signaled that the text of the bill would be released at some point today, and he just spoke with reporters. Let's play that back.
Together, bipartisan work is ongoing. We're almost there. We worked really hard to achieve consensus on a bill that responsibly funds the government into March of next year. It'll go to March 14, and that date was chosen because it coincides with the calendars of the House and Senate, and it makes sense for us to get the appropriations done. But our aim is to do it early in the year, not wait till March, and all the appropriators and the people on the committees of jurisdiction are already working to do that. We've been working around the clock to get the CR done.
CBS News political reporter Torian Small is live on Capitol Hill, where talks are happening right now. So, Torian, how close are we to seeing that final stopgap funding bill?
Well, Vlad, House Republican leadership say that it's imminent that the release of this text will be coming out fairly soon. What that means is a bit different to some people. I think Representative Scalise said that it could be in the next few hours. Speaker Johnson said that it would be today for sure. But I should remind you that he has reneged now twice on when we will be seeing the text of this legislation. He originally said it'll be over the weekend, then he said it will be Monday night. Now we're here on a Tuesday, still waiting for this. And why this is important is because the House also has a deadline set by Republicans that allows legislators to look at bills for 72 hours before a vote can happen. What we've seen happen before, though, especially under Speaker Mike Johnson, is waiving of that rules in order to stick to a timeline for this session. And because of that, we're seeing other Republicans not so happy with Speaker Johnson. Congressman Derek Van Orden of Wisconsin was caught by reporters today saying that he's not too happy with the fact that we're in the same process of kicking the can down the road and waiting to the final hours in order to pass bills here on the Hill.
All right, Torian Small for us. Thank you, Torian. Let's switch gears now and bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with a look at the national forecast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Vlad. Good. We've got some active weather on kind of both coasts here today, the East Coast, but especially out west, where another atmospheric river setup is taking place and bringing rain, wind, and mountain snow to much of Oregon and Washington state. Let's talk about what we're seeing out there across the country today. There is a front that's setting up shop, an area of showers across the lower Mississippi Valley. It's nice and mild across the east as one front clears, but this next one will move through tomorrow. It's rain and snow showers from much of the Pacific Northwest. Cities like Seattle and Portland could have wind gusts over 50 miles per hour tonight into tomorrow as another system comes onshore. But again, look how mild it is. Near 60 today in New York City, 56 in Boston. Meantime, it's much colder up across the northern plains. Snow showers likely, and we've got highs below freezing in Sioux Falls, Minneapolis, up toward parts of North Dakota. We're looking at temperatures in the teens today, and some of that Arctic air will eventually make it into the east just in time for the first weekend of winter. Here's a look at satellite and radar right now. Again, one front clearing the coast. There's that new area of showers developing around Memphis, but what we want to focus in on, the west. Let's take a closer look at that. One band of heavy rain just pushing onshore across much of Washington and Oregon, and we're starting to see that heavy snow across the Cascades, and this will continue through tonight. Center of the low is out to sea, but winds are really going to be howling with this system, especially overnight as this band of rain and even thunder comes on shore. Heavy snow across the mountains, and there is a wind advisory in effect as well as a flood watch. But you can see these winds gust to 50+ miles per hour as that storm comes on shore tonight, and we could be seeing snowfall amounts across the Cascades, several inches, possibly half a foot, even more in the highest elevations. And in the east, the active pattern continues with yet another round of rain moving through tomorrow. That could slow down the evening commute in many of our major northeast cities before a blast of cold by the weekend. Vlad, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. The jury has reached a verdict in the trial of a man accused of killing Cash App founder Bob Lee. We're live in San Francisco outside the courthouse next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We're just about 2 hours away from hearing the verdict in the trial of a man accused of killing Cash App founder Bob Lee. Nemo Momeni is charged with stabbing the tech exec back in April of 2023. He claims it was in self-defense. After months of testimony, jurors reached a verdict last night. CBS News San Francisco reporter Lauren Toms is following the trial for us, and she joins us live to discuss. Lauren, these deliberations went on for quite a while. What did we hear from the jurors, if anything?
Yeah, well, jurors in this case were permitted to actually ask every witness who took the stand their own questions. This process filtered through the judge and attorneys and back through the judge, who asked each witness, including Nemo Momeni himself, these questions from jurors with more than 50 questions for Nemo Momeni, ranging from his experience with martial arts to the nature of his relationship with Bob Lee. And that process really shed light into the type of jury that this is. They showed they're rather inquisitive and willing to take their time. And we saw that during these 7 days of jury deliberations as they asked even more questions we do not know the nature of, but all of that to get to this unanimous verdict that we'll soon learn in just a couple of hours.
All right, Lauren, we'll be tracking and hearing back from you once we learn of the verdict. We appreciate you as always. Thank you. All right, alleged Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann is now connected to a 7th murder. He was in court this morning where he was officially charged in the death of Valerie Mack. CBS News New York is covering this breaking news. Let's watch.
Women between 93 and 2001. As you can see, there was a press conference going on in Suffolk County right now, and let's check in with what they're saying.
Them in court. As I've previously stated, the work of the Gilgo Task Force is ongoing and continuing. And when I said that, I meant what I said. The defendant is now charged with the murder of 7 young women: Sandra Castilla from 1993, Valerie Mack from 2000, Jessica Taylor from 2003. Maureen Brainerd Barnes from 2007, Melissa Bartholomew from 2009, Megan Waterman from 2010 in June, and Amber Costello from September of 2010. Again, they occurred between 1993 and 2010. We are here because the Gilgo Task Force has continued to work together to obtain not only evidence for the charged crimes, but has continued to work on other uncharged crimes as well. And I am grateful for the great work that the Gilgo Task Force has done. Of course, not only my office and my team, but the other agencies who have worked with us. And we're gonna talk about that in a while. As you've also probably noticed, we here with us today are the victims' family members. I think pretty much every charged victim, their family members are here. Specifically, we're joined by Joanne and Edwin Mack, who are the parents of Valerie Mack. Through the grand jury process, we get to learn a little bit about our victims, and we did that through the Mack family. Valerie is very similar to the other victims in this case. Extraordinary person. The family are extraordinary people, and we are honored to prosecute this case for Valerie and her family, or on behalf of Valerie and her family. And again, I think the Mack family is emblematic of the other families in this case who have steadfastly stood by their loved ones and jealously guarded their memories. And we have nothing but respect and admiration for those victims' families. We also, speaking of gratitude, I want to mention our task force partners, some of whom I haven't mentioned here before, but of course we have our great sheriffs, Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Errol Toulon Jr. I know undersheriffs, I spoke with undersheriffs Steve Kios and Keith Taylor. They're here to support us, and as well as the task force. Our Suffolk County Police Department, we have Acting Commissioner Rob Waring, who I spoke to, and I saw Deputy Police Commissioners Kevin Catalina and Daryl Simmons. So I know, among others, we have this homicide squad led by Kevin Byer, as well as Sergeant Stephen Geyer. Inspector Sean Barron from the Suffolk County PD is with us here today. I want to thank the Suffolk County PD, both the agency as well as the Homicide Bureau, for their work on this and many other cases. We have the New York State Police, Major Stephen Udise, Captain Ken Gine, and his team, who've been instrumental in the task force and the great work that they've done, and I want to thank them. We have FBI Supervisory Special Agent Don Osbacher's here. Special Agent Craig Mateo, I believe, is here. But the FBI has been and continues to be tremendous help in this case, and we certainly want to thank them going forward. And we really appreciate the work that they've done and the work that they continue to do for us. United States Secret Service, I don't know if they're here, but they've been assisting with a lot of the electronic devices, so we want to certainly thank them as well. New York City OCME. Somehow I've neglected to thank them through all of the various superseding indictments. Specifically, I want to thank their anthropology unit and their forensic biology department. They were working here in Suffolk during the commission of many of these crimes, and so they've come back to Suffolk to assist us in our investigation and prosecution of these cases, and they've done a tremendous job, and we certainly want to thank them, as well as our medical examiner's office in Suffolk County, led by Odette Hall. Dr. Hall has been tremendous in this case. Of course, our own Suffolk County Crime Lab with Director Constance Dinkle and her team. They have, again, like all of these partners, not only do they help us with the Gilgo cases, they help us with so many more cases, and we certainly thank them. I want to thank my own team, led by Chief Investigator Rich Zacharis, the ADAs who I've worked with, who are doing a tremendous job, and everyone. Our team, we have an army of people from my office who is really doing a great job, and we want to thank them. A case of this magnitude takes the assistance of so many different moving parts, and we certainly thank all of the folks who people don't even know about, who have really helped us significantly. It's more than it's just a literal army of people. So we certainly appreciate that. As we said, we are not limiting this investigation to Gilgo Beach. We've moved off of the beach. I think that if you had asked me when we started this, could we potentially get to the place where we are now? I think that we thought that this was a possibility, and we're just very happy that we're here. So we're going to continue to work these cases. We're going to continue to prepare these cases for trial. Regarding the murder of Valerie Mack, most of it is in the discovery letter, so I'm not going to repeat. Suffice to say that Valerie's body was discovered on November 19, 2000, in a wooded area off of Mill Road by hunters. From there, we worked the case. According to the bail document, as you see, the evidence is we have mitochondrial DNA from a hair that was found on the body of Valerie Mack, which was portion of the body of Valerie Mack, which was found off of Mill Road. That hair, mitochondrial DNA analysis was performed, and that hair was consistent with the mitochondrial DNA profiles of both Asa Yurman and her daughter, Asa Ellerup, and her daughter, Victoria Yurman.
Watching our partners at WCBS New York as they continue to cover the Gilgo Beach serial killer, who's been charged now with the murder of a seventh woman, Valerie Mack. Officials are giving an update on that. We'll keep an eye on those developments, bring you some news as warranted. Meanwhile, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the final look at the national forecast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Vlad. Good morning. Yeah, our big story is the Northwest. Once again, that atmospheric river, it is back. We've got another blast of rain and mountain snow moving onshore today. You can see the rain just starting to move inland over portions of Washington and Oregon states. We've also got winter weather alerts, winter storm warnings, especially for the mountain passes. And take a look at how much snow we're talking there. As much as 2 feet of snow in the northern Cascades. Snoqualmie Pass could pick up another 9 inches of snow, leading to treacherous travel through those mountain passes in the Cascades. Meanwhile, it's mild in the east, but a big blast of cold is on the way by the weekend. Vlad, I'll send it back over to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.